2 or 3 hours. We opened tonight's team coverage with the stories regarding the current state of man's mental condition after the recent storms.
No.
We'll take it over to Beth out in Snellville. Well, it seemed to have blown Beth away. Keep in touch. God, it's hard to satirize the news. In fact, hard's not the word. Embarrassing. Impossible. Many people seem to believe that life gives you a choice. Either look at its mouth sores or have some of your own. Flabby minds equal rubber necks. Loose attention attracts fiction. Human sorrow needs no fuel. The local purpose of perceived reality is to keep you local and in your place. On one world, the creatures are not permitted to individually suffer until the last 2 minutes of their lives. Then all bets are off, all restraints undone, and they can scream, holler, moan, curse, and do anything else they want to their complete heart's content. Those of you currently involved in systems analysis might care to note that this was affected by not allowing the creatures to think until the final 2 minutes. Grossly unfair, you might say, but effective as hell. Once upon a time, a man tried to figure out life without being critical in the process. He ended up with the world's largest known brain seizure. You see, there's this about travel. When you're going somewhere new, there's both the joyful excitement and anticipation of the new destination, but also the hesitation, fear, and uncertainty of leaving the old. It is for this reason that man can speak. It is for reasons beyond this one that a few men can both speak and think. In a faster mode of movement, speech would be of the past and thought always a child of tomorrow. Although the band will play on either side of the stage, awakened dancers pursue a line straight down the middle of the floor with focused intensity sufficient to eventually reach warp plus speed. Whatever that means. The illiterate can't embezzle, but everyone can kill. Just look how people treat their minds. When writers run dry, they lay heavy on the modifiers. Same as with routine thought. One day a man suddenly thought, the more civilized, educated, and sophisticated you become, the more critical you are of life. What the hell's going on here? He moaned as he fell, and his brain began to seize. If you don't think about other people within the normal framework of how people think, you can't dislike other people. Unfair, some might say, but they're too normal to fool with anyway. Some definitions and other news from the city. Humor, a common cover for hostility. If you fight in the civil wars, you're wounded as soon as you begin. Non-aggressive art, the art you never see. In the urban ballroom, all dancers will step on you and expect you to return the courtesy. The crowd will pay to see two types of metaphysical performances, one which proclaims man's perilous position, and the other which says he can escape, but not just now. Has it yet to strike you, usefully curious, how cows and sheep seem to uncontrollably weep at the calling out of routine bus schedules and departures? Only the critical must speak. Only the critical must speak, which is why much of what men imagine they want to hear is silence. What if your own brain cells had a head monk to enforce the rules regarding talking? When all was hormones, everyone was happy, but didn't know it. When most becomes neurons, people become anxious, fearful, and dissatisfied. They also get rich, become famous, and live longer. Practically speaking, the problem with this sticky area between thinking and consciousness is that it's so downright sticky. Okay, truth be told, and so far as words permit on a Tuesday, there is a distinction in the stickiness as seen from the two separate sides, i.e., you can think about consciousness and lose awareness of the fact that you're just thinking about it and not actually affecting it. But when you are more conscious, there is no mistaking at all exactly what thinking is. Rest and comfort update. If you whine, you can sleep. A guy told a mystic, "You sure do upset people." And the mystic replied, "Only dumb people." And the guy said, "Yeah, well, sure, you're right. Like, hey, you don't upset me." Encouraging other people to do the norm is so useless, uneventful, and uninteresting as to be far beyond the reach of satire or sarcastic comment. To believe there is a struggle creates a struggle. Trying to take the trip starts out mental, but by now you know that it can't stop there. Okay, you severely suspect that it can't. When you can control attention and thus facilitate a new relationship with imagination, you can then consider it fortunate that the ability to dream of Baltimore is almost sure proof of the existence of Maryland. See, under ordinary mental conditions, this is not necessarily propitious. This is all software suspect and our hardware undervalued. Thus is all software suspect and our hardware undervalued. An update. There's a condensed version of everything. Words put into action. Man's collective march of progress is also the individual's genes telling him, come on, let's go. Religious prophets. Comedians' life sends out to fill in between the animal acts and the baton twirlers. And now, a matter of manners. If people knew when to laugh in the right places, people wouldn't be laughing so much. On one planet, when life gets tired of a particular myth maker and mystic, it'll just cause him to start getting critical and cranky, and then even fewer people will pay attention to him than the none who did so before. Vocalese update. When you speak, there's no need to use modifiers. Listeners will fill in their own if they need them. The heart of being civilized and sophisticated is to deny the truth of genetics. Checkup reminder. You can't be serious. You can only pretend to be. Of late, upon retiring each night, one man says to himself, when you can high jump in your sleep, it's hard to ever take up the shot put. And immediately upon arising each morning, he looks himself in the mirror and says, I see you're back among the living. And he has found this part so useful that he now utilizes it periodically throughout the day. There is the great transcendency itself, and then the talking about it. Guess which one you hear about? Okay, we can up the stakes. If it wasn't talked about, you'd have never known it existed. But hearing about it is just a hobby, while experiencing it is a real hobby. An unsubstantiated definition, the mystical adventure, the world's greatest dream superimposed on man's routine one. Everyone has two faces, one smiles and one frowns, and one of them can't be seen in local mirrors. Note, this is not dental news, but rather a space exploration update. Travel can be transcendental, but pre-established destinations, never. And yet, under such conditions, how to make anyone want to move, even the mystically inclined. In a temporal world of past, present, and future, wherein the first two are already known, executed, and exhausted, only the future counts. Only the potential is potent. There is but one escape from the mind, which when completed also frees the body, and is generally known as the mystical adventure, the great liberation. I have another legend, one of the unpublished legends. This one, by the way, is not actually from another universe. It is, however, from another galaxy. Just to keep the record straight. On this one world, they have a activity that's similar to what would be called here mysticism. It is, they're called, by the way, wedgeism.
No.
Well, that's not really the point, but I thought you might just be interested. But just trust me that for the sake of what my translation of the legend, that the two are comparable. The legends say that on their world, when someone periodically pops up, apparently talking to some public degree about this wedgeism, that very similar to here, for it to be of any use to those who would be interested in such things, it has always got to be just in front of what is known, reasonable, rational, and acceptable. But the legend also says, well, and you understand that even those who are interested on that planet, same as here, it has to be, even though it's got to be to some degree, to some demonstrative, observable degree, to what the would-be or what the public speaker in the wedgeism area is. Whoever he is, what he speaks of must be to some degree just beyond what is known, reasonable, acceptable reality and information. It's got to be just beyond it, to be of any use, to be of any nourishment to those who are interested in such matters. But the little bit I was going to bring out that is singular to the legends of their galaxy and this particular world is that it further points out that for the person conveying the information, that the person must stay even further ahead of what is known, rational, accepted, established, that he's got to stay further ahead with himself, or herself, or itself. I'm not going to tell you the conclusion to the legend, because that's the only part that's of any interest, or should be. The fact that, and we're not talking about personalities, remember, we're not really talking about individuals, but if this wedgeism, if mysticism, if being more conscious, being able to think outside the normal status quo, here, if there's any validity, you understand it cannot be the same information conveyed. It has always got to be something, to some degree, It's got to be ahead of what seems to be real, reasonable, rational, sequential. It's got to be just beyond a line of it being ordinary information. If it's too much, no one can hear it. If it's not enough, everyone's saying, It is even on their planet, I believe, I'm safe to say, it is sort of or akin to the illustration you would find if you tried to look at in a dictionary under non-existent line. That it is an area that is almost indefinable and almost impossible to stand in, and it's not that far removed, as now I think about it, from one of the news items tonight about the area between thinking and consciousness, that there is a stickiness to it. It is a singular stickiness. It's not in gray areas like of morality. It's not me having picked out two areas that even people on this planet of ordinary mental means make comments periodically that everything in life is not either black or white. Everything is not just good or evil, sometimes a matter of morals or principles and et cetera. There's sort of a middle ground, albeit somewhat problematic and difficult to deal with and blah, 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 blah. No. There's only one real sticky area, and that's between thinking and consciousness. But there's a similarity between what I'm trying to convey with this, my little translation of this legend, that to convey any new information, it has to be new to some degree. And for those who are severely stricken by the desire for wedgism, it's got to be new beyond any reasonably available source. But then you get right to the point to where it's just about enough, and just right up to that point, then it's too much. Any of you with very astute internal awareness should be aware also that you don't have to look at my fingers and you don't have to listen to this legend. All you got to do is think to your own brain and go, God damn it, that's right. Because apparently the band keeps playing on the left side of the stage and the right side, and then you dance like this, and you think, well, I'm right brain, I'm left brain, I'm thinking, I'm conscious, I'm almost got it. To ever reach warp speed, the dancers have to go down the middle of the floor with such an intensity, such a velocity. I put in my little item, warp plus speed, which I probably misused it. I only have a passing familiarity with contemporary science fiction lore, but insinuating a speed that would transcend normal thought in the same way that the speed of light seems to transcend all known physical laws of expectations on this planet. There is this area, back to my fingers, that the information has to be new. And it's got to be, to a degree, new beyond anything that you'd normally expect. But when you get to that degree and you think, God, it's almost there, and you go just one scintilla more, 1 millimeter more, it's usually too much. But the source itself, the legend, since they made it, even on their planet, the same as legends here, they personify it. It says that whoever is doing it must stay even further ahead into the area that is unknown, unpredictable, non-sequential. But you understand that then it gives the would-be hearer, the would-be recipient of the information, it gives you about triple duty. Triple difficulty, those of you who like to be technical, triple the dose of impossibility. If you consider, again, what I used to draw the apparent in a temporal, spatial world within a closed system, what appears to be time, if you looked at that as like the level of consciousness in the human nervous system, etc. that would seem to be, by all accounts, the best you can make of it, that there is some past we're not going to argue with, and there seems to be obviously some future, and there seems to be some sense of the present. And the present would seem to be, at least for the sake of setting up a verbal structure, would seem to be aligned, if we want to look at it, where you personally, your sense of your own individuality, if we think there's an infinite line of time, this is where it seems to cut at any particular moment that you're aware that the present is you. It's like your own nervous system, your own spinal cord going through the horizontal line, that's the present. That's a nice story, and it's good for all the way from undergraduate philosophy to graduate philosophy, and even theoretical cosmology nowadays. And it's overly complicated because the past and the present are in fact one. They are in fact one on the basis that they are already exhausted, they are already known, they have already been executed, they're done with. The ordinary sense of consciousness cannot conceive of that being true of the present, but you've got to remember that's the same sorts of people that will not deal with the fact or could not learn anything from it if I ask them again, what are you going to think next? All right, let's make it easy. What are you going to say next? And they go, well, I guess that's according to many different variables. Did you know you were going to say that? Well, sure I did. Well, then we have established their lack of veracity. We shouldn't keep being nice. We have established their low, that is, standard level of intelligence. They know no more than your local chipmunk or cement paving block. What seems to be the present under ordinary conditions is already known. It is known in the fact that it is the past replayed. It is sanity. It is not a mistake with ordinary people. It is sanity. It is the stability of the ordinary march of consciousness, the collective march. Because that's the way we identify each other at an ordinary level. That's how you know that your mother's your mother, your best friend's your best friend, your neighbor's your neighbor. Not just the physical looks. All that plays a part, but that's not the basis of it. The way you really know somebody is really them. That is, and they're still sane as how? They keep acting the same. They don't change. That's how you know. That's how an ordinary person stays sane. Ordinary consciousness would deny that the past and the present are one, but they are absolutely one. Not because I say so, but if you understand even the fairly direct examples I pulled out that you should have already established for yourself, that under any ordinary condition, you don't know what you're going to say next. That is so point blank. It is also such a powerful piece of information that the ordinary mind can hear that. The sentence makes sense. And you can tell an ordinary person, civilized, educated, all spruced up, hip, worldly wise, suave and debonair. You can tell them, or you could ask them, say, have you ever considered the fact that you don't know what you're going to say next? I mean, you, a man, a head of $1 million corporation, a man with 2 doctorate degrees, a man specializing in communication, or a doctor of psychology, or of neurology. But do you realize you do not know what you're going to say next? Which is not a theory, it's just a fact. Which I can say amongst us, any of you who are us, because you know it's a fact. It's not open to question, except with ordinary minds. The sense makes sense, they hear it. And if you even try to slip up on them and try to appeal to their academic vanity and say, well, you're so smart. I've been thinking about something. I've come up with an observation that I find very striking, very singular, and you go, blah, 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 build it up and pat them on the back and give them a little drink and say, listen to this. I didn't know who to tell it to, but God, I'm glad I met you. You're about the only person I can share this with. Have you ever considered the fact, did it ever strike you just this simply, that you do not, I say you, none of us, but that you do not know what you're going to say next? The sentence is just as clear as saying, hand me the sugar. And the mind will go, now I can start doing all sorts of variations. What the mind does is blink. It just does not compute. It does not register. And if you insisted on an answer, which would show that then you would drop back to their level, but if you really, so that you get the point, if you really insisted, like, well, do you hear what I'm saying? Do you hear what I'm saying? The person will go, well, yeah. I'm just going to do one of just many various. But they'd go, well, I hear what you're saying, but geez, I mean, there's so many variables. I guess you'd have to consider what kind of stress you were under, or what the emotions and sensation of the occasion was, or whether you were in a field in which you had some knowledge and expertise, or whether you were stumbling into some brand new area. And you go, no. Just what you just said just then, your response. You didn't know you were going to say that. What can you do with that, an ordinary mind? The best they can do, really, if you push on, they're going to have to finally say, well, I don't get the point. They're going to have to say, well, you're wrong. You're crazy. They're going to have to fall into one of the few useful cases of what men like to so often refer to as lying, which is no more than saying that the humidity is high. Except in that one case, if there was any potential to someone to think, for them to deny that, for them to say, that's not true. That is the statement that you don't know what you're going to say next, for somebody to finally look that idea point blank and go, that's not true. And that's all you need to know about them if you're too stupid to know where they live to begin with. You can't go anywhere after that. But notice this, an ordinary person, we're back to the great self-stabilizing, self-protection mechanism. If you can make an ordinary person suddenly see that, they would explode. And probably mess up your good clothes, get it all over you. They'd go nuts on the spot. They're not going to do it. That's why they can't see it. What I'm saying is, the reason that they won't compute, the reason that they can't hear it, is what are they going to do with it? It would put them into a brain seizure. It would just, maybe I should say lock, but I assume you guys got the point. It's like, your brain seizes off like an internal combustion engine. And that's all it would do. You'd just be hypnotized. You'd just be finished. Of course, beyond that is also the secondary striking information that once you can see that, once you just say, well, that's true, is then the other it's like a free bonus. It's like you got a cute whistle along with the cornflakes. Just got free. Is once you see, well, that's right, I know what I'm going to say next. And then, of course, simultaneously, once you see that, once you understand that in your own nervous system, you also immediately understand no one does. Not popes, not presidents, not people running armies. And then immediately after that, it's like finding another prize within the whistle, because then you realize, but it doesn't make a damn bit of difference. I mean, I now see that nobody knows what they're going to say next. We won't carry it any further than that for the time being. But that no one on this planet, as far as you know, no ordinary person knows what they're going to say next. And yet the damn thing just rolls on. People debate. People stand and talk. People do this. People say, well, what do you think? And somebody said, I don't know. I may have to retire and reflect on this.
No.
Why? You're not going to know any more than you do now. Man said, wait a minute. I heard the question. We're considering now what possible action we should take if Army C does not withdraw from the northern sector of the town. Now, wait a minute. I can't be too hasty. I've got to reflect before I speak on that. And you realize it's a song and dance. And it's already choreographed. The person can go, but it appears to be quite serious at any ordinary level. We're talking about the prime minister, a warlord, let's say the president of a neighboring country. And he says, well, so our neighbors there, Army C, says they will not withdraw by tomorrow. Yes, that was their word. What should we do, Prime Minister? And he said, wait a minute. He can give I assume you're getting the point. I just tried to make up an example. He can say, wait a minute. We're talking about the possible loss of thousands of lives of our young men, plus the destruction of our neighbors there. Wait a minute. And just because they said that they wouldn't take my terms, wait a minute. He's waiting for an answer. Wait a minute. I've got to think about this. And you understand, it all appears to be quite serious. But there's nothing to think about. I mean, if you jumped in there and you grabbed the guy, the prime minister, the president of this country, the general, and you say, what are you going to say next? And he'd go, wait a minute, that's what I'm worrying about. I'm trying to think about. You go, no. How about that? How about your answer just then? When did you plan to say that?
No.
He go, I ain't got time. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. That was the third, but that's the second prize you get free once you realize it. That no one knows what they're going to say next from top to bottom. The guy on this corner, a homeless guy, a drunk guy. Don't know like that though. Just an ordinary guy, a bricklayer, a sober bricklayer, which we won't go into that. I don't know what state he lives in. Obviously not a state of bricklayermentation. All the way from just the most ordinary of people, all the way from that to a pope, a rabbi, the head of the Greek Orthodox Church, the president of Spain, the king of Belgium. Nobody knows what they're going to say next. That's the second little prize. But you realize, well, hey, I should have known that. But it makes no difference. Of course, then you realize, well, life is alive. Jesus. We're a bunch of shills. We're Kermit the Frog and Bert and Ernie, and we don't know it. And it doesn't matter. It is then, you might say, if you need it, as a kind of release. Since everybody else dreams of liberation, that's part of what the real wedgism and mysticism, of course, is. But they dream of liberation, but they're dreaming of liberation for something of which they can never be freed. And they're dreaming of liberation from a form of captivity that is not indeed captivity. It's health. It's life. That was a little one in there tonight I pointed out. If you didn't get it, maybe now it says that when everything was hormones, everyone was happy, but didn't know it. But once things become almost all neurons, then people become antsy, anxious, dissatisfied, disturbed. And they also put on weight, get rich, famous, and live longer. See, that's what ordinary people are supposed to go, wait a minute, you can't have it both ways. You can't? How can I describe it both ways? Well, no, wait a minute. No, things can't really be getting better, but then seem to appear to be getting worse, or we can't have people over here who seem to be becoming more conscious and agreeable and humane, and people over here who seem to be almost regressing. We can't have it both ways. Well, what'd they just say? Are you sure you understood me? Well, I'm just quoting what you said. You said, well, either the world, we're either getting better, we're becoming more intelligent, we're becoming more considerate and more insightful, such as I can say a few examples, we're either doing that, or we are becoming we're still just barbarians. We're getting worse. We're dressed up now. We've made scientific and technological advances, but all it's done is give us more efficient ways to kill each other. I mean, it's one or the other. And they could be saying to me or somebody, don't be telling me that life is getting better. I mean, look at the examples I just pointed out to you. We can't have it both ways. And the answer is, well, how'd you see them? We can't have it these both ways. Well, what do you call this? Back to where we were. Ordinary consciousness, as it's laughingly called sometimes, it's actually thinking, to give some comparison, usable comparison. At the ordinary workings of the ordinary mind, there is no distinction between the past and the present. And a proof of that, if you need it in any way, or you need a verbal way to structure it, if there was a separation, then you could, at the ordinary level, you could know beforehand what you're going to say next. But you do not, and even if it's possible, there's no need to. Even if you spent your life and got to the point at the ordinary mental level to where you knew what you were going to say next. And believe me, it would take all of your life if you live a long time. You would be almost a social outcast. You would probably be in dire financial straits. In other words, your ordinary life would not go swimmingly, as British mystics like to say. Your ordinary life would be almost constantly on the verge of being flushed. So even if you could, about all you'd amount to is you would end up being perhaps a public display of reticence. You would almost be a walking around muck. In other words, if you were going to try and only say that which you knew what you were going to say next, you would finally be rendered almost moot. Did you say mute or moot? I'm sorry, I said moot, and I meant to say mute. Well, watch it. A little additional, that wasn't humor, a little additional scientific information for those of you with a sense of humor. If the mind, at the ordinary level, could know what it was going to say next, then there would be, in fact, a distinction between the past and the present. But there is not at the mental level, which is part of the function of memory. It is part of the reason that ordinary people so often live in the past. I don't bring it up to pick on people and say, well, you shouldn't sit around and reminisce. Of course, you shouldn't sit around and reminisce. But it doesn't do any good to tell anybody that. If you're more conscious, you don't sit around and reminisce. If you find yourself sitting around reminiscing, you realize, Jesus Christ, I'm falling back down the stairs. I might as well be a bricklayer or an accountant myself. I'm back to my normal splendid state of stupidity. There's nothing to reminisce about. Well, the past was interesting. Yet to thinking it is. But that's not just a sarcastic piece of humor. It's interesting on the basis that's all they have to think about. The difference between thinking and consciousness, another way to put it, as I threw in, is that once you understand that the way it went, it said in a temporal world wherein there is past, present, and future. In a temporal world of past, present, and future, wherein the past and wherein the first two are actually the same and are known, executed, and exhausted, then only the future is of importance. Dash. Only the potential is potent. The fact being, anything that has already happened, and we're not talking about behavioral history, it's included, but that's irrelevant. It's of minor consequence. All right, truth. It's of no consequence. And even if it is, so what? You can't do anything about it. But I had a grandmother killed by a volcano. Don't tell me that's of no consequence. All right, I just admitted it was. Now, where is she? Did that help? There's additional scientific asides for those of you that I thought had brought your sense of humor along with your picnic basket. It is not that there is some moral or pseudo-spiritual danger in reminiscing. It's the fact that if you're reminiscing, you're at the ordinary level because there's nothing to be gained. It's not worth talking about. Those of you that now understand it, you understand. It's almost like, let's say as a kid, for some reason, they used to take sharp tacks and mash them in your finger. Yeah. And then you got a little bit older, even, shall we say, God forbid, a little more mature. And you thought, I'll stop that. And you never even saw fit to discuss it with anybody. You never even sit around and reflected, why did I quit mashing those thumbtacks into my thumb? You just reached the point and you didn't do it. You didn't have to go back to Jenny Craig Thumbtack Center. You didn't have to continue going to these support groups that go, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I have this almost uncontrollable desire. And they say, oh no, don't even have any thumbtacks in your house is the main thing. The point being, it is beyond the realm of ever occurring to you again. You don't think about it. I mean, to say, well, sometimes I do think about it. To take as silly an example as I started out with, what if a grown person now, you're sitting around, you're talking about, or you're watching TV, or you listen to, let's say you're watching TV news and it's something about phobias and people that are afraid to get around doorknobs or to look at the sky. You think, both of you think, boy, that must be horrible. And then the other guy goes, well, I'm going to tell you the truth. As a kid, I used to stick thumbtacks in my finger. And that one little bit, you might go, you can think of dumb things you did. And you don't know where it's going, but you thought maybe that was just a comment. Like, say, well, we all are a little nuts at one time in our life. And he goes, it still frightens me that I'm going to be overcome by that desire again. You understand? That's beyond the realm of even phobias or neuroses or psychoses. Your mind is now in a toxic dump. Yeah. It does not strike people. It's beyond the realm of it ever occurring again, much less to think about it. That is sort of what the past is to consciousness. It makes no sense to thinking. I can make the sentences, I guess, rhetorically stand up, but they make no sense to thought. The best thought can do it could try and say, well, all right, wait a minute. I went to all the trouble listening to it, for the last few minutes, so I'll listen. Wait a minute, let me think about that. And he goes, no. And it's why I keep doing all these kind of things, and I'm talking about a good, first-class, solid, educated, worldly wise mind. All it can do is go, at best it thinks, what the hell does that mean? I mean, what's the point? It can't be true. It doesn't know what to say. That the past is of importance. It is of importance to the genetic herd of man. It is importance to the collective. That's why we have cemeteries, for instance. For those of you who got a glimpse of that a few weeks ago. That's why ordinary people revere the dead. And in its full ramifications. Not that there's anything wrong with putting flowers on your father's grave and etc. But it's more than that. The past to thinking is not the past. The past is not dead. The past is the present. There is no distinction. The only distinction is if you ask ordinary thinking, if you said, I heard somebody say there's no difference between the past and the present. What do you think of that? And the mind goes, well, that's not true. Of course, you can't ask that person, how'd you know you were going to say that? They didn't know they were going to say it. They did not say it in the present. What they say is already known, it is executed, and it's exhausted because they have said it before. Why? Because they thought it before. Why? Because life made them think it before. Jim Henson, don't you understand? Jim Henson, even after he got popular, even after he was hot in the Muppets, not only on PBS at low money, but Hollywood blockbuster movies, even after they got real big, and Miss Piggy and Kermit and everybody had their own T-shirts, it never reached the spot that Jim Henson said, well, today's show, you guys go out there and wing it. He did not ever turn Bert and Ernie and the Cookie Monster. He didn't. I'm telling you a fact. I know that. He did not ever tell them, get out there and wing it. That's showbiz talk for ad lib. There is no such thing as ad lib. With one exception. With one exception, wedgism. When you get past this point, of course, going here on two dimensions, I kind of messed it up, but past here. Once you understand that all of this is the same, in a temporal world, which is where thinking lives, I'm not trying to play with pseudo-spiritualism or occultism or even science fiction, but the mind is directly tied to time. That is ordinary thinking. You can't think without a sense of time to it. But once you understand that ordinary thought, no matter who you are, that your thinking is done by Jim Henson. Your talking is done, for those of you who go back further, is done by Edgar Bergen, Paul Winchell, God. You won't go way back. Yahweh. Always sound like, well, never mind. I always like that one because I always thought, first time when you hear it, you think, well, he was the guy who had an act with Al Jolson for a while, wasn't he? Older than that, eh? Before they even put recordings on shellac. Once you understand that all thinking of no matter what stripe, that there is no exception, there's no out, it's not a theory, and it's not an argument, and to try to find some exception to. No matter what your mind thinks, no matter what it's ever thought, is all in that one area that is the past and present together. It is one dynamic, it is one reality. And it has a distinction to it that does separate it from what people are attempting to do by the wedgism on this other planet. Everything that you think, remember that's you generically and everyone. What you think has, I'm going to give them the three I already did, three distinct characteristics. It is always overlap, but the past and the present lumped together have three distinctions, which are the same three distinctions as ordinary thought. And that is, it's already known, it's already been executed, and it's exhausted. It's a fait accompli. Or as psychologists in Vegas say, it's a done deal. It's over. And even if you go, wait a minute, I wouldn't say it's over, that's over. So I'm doing this part again of ordinary things. You go, well, wait a minute, that's an interesting theory. I know it is. I got it in an interesting theory. Another person said, well, I was going to say it was, but if you're going to get smart ass about it, maybe it's not.
No.
Maybe it's named your theory. Oh, maybe it's not. Now, wait a minute. The more I think about it, I don't like it. Do you understand? The whole point of that is irrelevant. Except ordinary people, it could be relevant. That could be a debate. That could be somebody's academic reputation at stake, or it could be two guys standing at a bar and one guy's apparent, instant reputation's at stake. It's all those three characteristics that distinguish it from attempting to do whatever the hell this kind of stuff is. Is that thinking, me still using the distinction that there is some between thinking and let's call it consciousness. Thinking is already known, it's pre-written, it's known what you're going to think. And it's already been executed. If you don't believe it, the person goes, wait a minute, what I'm about to say next is not already executed. Well, how'd you know what you're going to say? Hey, don't pull that crap on me again. It's already been done. Except the mind says, well, it's not been done. Because what I just said in response to you, I've never been done before. Really? How'd you know to do it? Hey, you're playing that shit with me again. All thinking, all ordinary thinking, which is actually thinking, but all thinking is known. It's been pre-written. And for you egomaniacs, try this. You already wrote it. Yeah. Does that help them? No. But for a moment they go, well, that's a little bit better, until they think about it. It's known, it's executed, and it's exhausted. There is nothing to do with anything that you've already thought. There's nothing to do with what the collective's already thought. And there's nothing to do with what you're going to think, what you would ordinarily call next. Because there is no next. It has got to be new. That is what consciousness, using the words as distinctions of comparison between thinking and consciousness has got to be new. It has got to be unwritten, which is what I was trying to get you to consider the last couple of times when I was pointing out the difference between religion being a kind of, perhaps, crude shell, simplified version of attempting to focus one's attention, to increase one's consciousness. Mysticism itself and religion is like the simple form, but the one distinction that's useful is to realize that religion and any known form of wedgism, any known form of mysticism of any sort, the distinction is it is already choreographed. You say, well, I'm looking for new information. They say, well, here it is, come here. It's not there. Of course, if you were an ordinary would-be mystic and you go, I'm looking for new information, they go, well, you're in the right place. And you go, well, what is it? And they say, well, if we tell you, it'll screw everything up. That we understand enough that we can't tell you what it is, because if we tell you what it is, it's already outdated and it's going to hurt us. So you're welcome to be here, but we can't tell you what it is. Even for a mystic. Now, you got to admit, that's kind of trying. To say, yeah, he's right. I was prepared for weirdness, like people dress funny and with a face painted, but ease up on that. What the hell does that mean? And they go, well, yeah, we know. Maybe you shouldn't stay. Maybe it'll drive you nuts. Of course, all this becomes a very strange kind of one-legged tango dance. Because then would-be mystics go, well, wait a minute. I believe I'm about to get it. Wait a minute, I do want to come in. Because you're trying to tell me something, and they go, yeah, I know why you're saying that, because I almost did, and I shouldn't have done it. So I take back what I just said. You probably, go somewhere else, you'll probably be better off. I mean, nothing personal. God knows you're welcome here, but I shouldn't even told you what I did. I take it back. You think, maybe this is my one chance. You think, should I stay? Is this it? Is this it? And of course, your thinking says, have you completely lost all sense in resemblance to sanity? thing is, it's got to be new to move past thought. And if it's new, in the real sense of it being consciousness, as opposed to just thinking, or if you prefer, of being more conscious than the normal state, being conscious beyond the limits of mere thought, it has got to be new. And it's got to be new enough that it's not simply the past and present. But if it's too new, it won't make any sense. And now I'm using sense in a most charitable sense. That is, you'll hear it and it's just babble. I mean literally babble, not the kind of babble I do on purpose sometimes. But you would hear it and you go, damn it, that makes no sense. Repeat it, and you repeat it. And it might as well be playing a Donald Duck, part of a Donald Duck cartoon soundtrack backwards. It just makes no sense. So then you got to move back and go, all right, that's too new. And by the way, new is a terrible word. But there's not a better one in the language, because new always infers like, well, there's something that somebody, let's say it was me, we'll use me like I'm playing a role, not me personally. The guy says, well, to be more conscious, what you need is new information. And of course, the tacit insinuation is whoever said that is implying, well, I know what it is. But there's also a further implication that nobody even thinks about. It's just part of the ordinary thought process that if it's new information, then it's something that you've discovered. Something, because it's new. Then the whole definition of new, or one of the definitions, is that which is unfamiliar to the person who sees it as new. So it's like the guy singing it, I've discovered it. That's why it's a terrible word. Well, the implication with that is, well, it was lost. No, it wasn't lost, because if it was lost, it's from the past, which is where religion steps into a certain predictable track. The whole idea is that a paradise of being more conscious is something we've lost. We got to go back, right? The one is to say, well, if it's new, that is, well, just one person's discovered it, or a person, or some limited number of people, and they've discovered it like new laws of science. People don't discover new laws of science. They put new names on phenomenon. So to believe that this kind of information that people want, that it's new, is really misnamed. But there is not a better one. If there was, I'd tell you what it is. Wedge is better. But it's a little too new. I was just trying to see. Well, I'm trying to work up to it. See, that's why I made up that legend, so that I can gradually work into us using wedgeism and that which is wedgical. And perhaps we can finally get somebody here to make us up some colorful robes, and we'll put special paint on our face or under our armpits, and we'll become wedgies. Back to where I started the legend. Would you try to follow me while I wrap this particular roll of bologna back up? Put a skin on this particular block. Think back to legend. It says that, now let's take it real simple and personal, like sounds like fables and legends normally do. That they say on that planet the whole idea of new information, of something that would nourish the creatures on that planet who have a hunger for something up here that they can't find. Remember, it's got to be a hunger up here. It's not down here. The hunger down here has already been taken care of. If anyone believes they're not, then you are physically deranged, perverted. You're already sick. I mean, you got no business dealing with this. I'm not speaking to you people there that I know. So the nourishment is here. To use the legend from this other world, and they're saying those who hunger for some sort of this different new nourishment, something they can't ordinarily find, if they do find what appears to be a source of it, like it's a person, some collection of genes that life has put out there, and it is talking about that which is up past the lump sum of present and past, talking about the future is what it amounts to. For them to talk about it, they have to talk about always like the good old carrot hanging on the stick in front of the donkey, that you try to get free transportation out of this poor animal by never feeding it. You just always hold the carrot right on a stick out there with a string right in front of it, and he just keeps walking forever. But he keeps walking, and he can't ever get to it. That is like the information from the the ideas of the great secret, or the secret work, or the new information, the great transcendental experience, whatever it is that can be conveyed from it, has to be out in front of your nose. Allegorically speaking, it has to be new and fresh enough that the mind can't really reach it in the same way as the donkey cannot get that carrot, but it can't be so far in front that it just turns the donkey into a neurotic or puts him into a physical, if not mental, seizure. He just locks up like, well, there's nothing to do with it. So it has to keep going like, I can almost get it, I almost get it. But then what appears to be the source, what appears to be a person, which is actually the Ken and Barbie super hole, that injection hole in the great super Ken and Barbie collective plastic doll on their planet, that is the source of it, it has to make itself even further new. Then there's a running battle of how far in the future can you go and pull the future back mentally. And the answer, if verbally, is almost none. How far can you go? Almost nowhere. Which some of you might find reminiscent of the word, it's almost not possible. But it is. And plus, you remember the game we started last time of, do you realize that? Do you realize that? This sort of thing is the ultimate, do you realize that game? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.